The 1930s in the West, the heyday of the jazz era and the beginning of the Great Depression. It was the first truly global economic crisis, and it left millions of people without any hope for a better tomorrow. It seemed that poverty would last for many years. While the authorities began introducing the first anti-crisis programs, designers fought on their own front. How to cheer up people when they don't even have enough money to visit the cinema? And it's in black and white anyway. Back then, American designers developed a series of brightly colored radios. A new material, Catalin plastic, helped to make them affordable for a wide range of consumers. Many families were forced to sell their family jewelry, and to make sure that women wouldn't be left without an opportunity to go out and have fun, designers offered them bakelite jewelry. This heat-resistant plastic was produced on an industrial scale and previously used in the manufacture of home appliances like phone casings. The fashion for bright jewelry made out of the first plastics lasted till the middle of the 20th century. The value of these items was not in the material but in the message that they carried. Everything will be all right. My jewelry is a reflection of the world around me. I work with all sorts of materials and try to avoid limiting myself to them. So far, plastic, silicone, rubber, bronze, brass, silver. Actually, the material will never limit me. Tetyana Chorna creates conceptual collections. In other words, a series of works carrying a certain idea, and tries to break the stereotype that jewelry should always be valuable. I want to provoke and shatter this. I like this more as an art object than we can wear. This way it's both an art object that can decorate a space and a piece of jewelry that can adorn a person. Beetles, snails and other animals, what is their secret and why do people wear them? How did a designer from an entirely different industry manage to succeed in the world of jewelry? And in which bizarre forms does contemporary art intertwine with jewelry? UATV visited the workshop where new life is born every day. Plastic is more current than ever. Vintage bracelets and beads from bakelite, Catalin and cellulose are back among popular trends. At the beginning of 2019, Master of Crafts covered a startup created by Sorokina, who creates her jewelry from recycled synthetic polymers. This way, the designer demonstrates that the world of fashion can and should care about ecology. There's a very interesting thing happening generally in the world, with all these strict boundaries swept away everywhere, in music, in fashion, in literature. There's a mixing of styles, so the materials used have now stopped being a decisive difference between costume and fine jewelry. Now I hope it will be rather an issue of concept and the difference by shape and concept of the pieces.
Будет вопрос о какой-то концепции, и будет разделение по форме и концепции украшений.
After all, unexpressed ideas actually brought Tetyana to jewelry experiments, even though it seemed earlier that she'd found her calling in life. I was involved in architecture for 14 years and was the chief architect of projects. There were many projects: neighborhoods, residential buildings, hotels, restaurants and bridges. A lot of different things. Perhaps I didn't quite realize myself in full as an architect, because to get from drawings to the finished structure turned out to be no distance. The great economic crisis of 2014 put an end to many of Tetyana's projects. Against the backdrop of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the future seemed bleak, and just as it was during the times of the Great Depression, she wanted to find solace in little things. For example, in jewelry. It started as something fun to do, as a hobby. I always wanted to adorn myself with something special, exclusive, different from what everyone else had. Actually, I also adopted this same approach in architecture, when besides the base form, I would put some other concept into it, and then it turns out well. For example, I have a jewelry series called City Adornments, packed with elements of a city. There are those trashy balconies, Kyiv city yards, chewing gum, sewer hatches, and clothes lines. She made her first collection just for fun, as a way to prank her friends and acquaintances. It's very interesting to observe a person's reaction when talking to them while wearing this jewelry. At first, they just glance at me, register that I'm wearing some sort of necklace or something. And then, after some time, usually 5 or 10 minutes, I realize that the penny has dropped. I just see their irises widening, and I get such a cool feeling from this, and I understand that this is what I want. Back then, 9 years ago, it was difficult to find something like that on sale. So some friends who liked such irony started going to Tetyana and placing orders. My friends are also sculptors, painters, and everyone would throw something in. It took some time before I got comfortable with the new material, and then I would make something from it. Later I got fascinated by various technical issues, and then it took off. And then I just couldn't help myself because I started experimenting with colors. Especially for UATV, Tetyana Chorna revealed which ideas and stories her collections share with the public, why she is striving to combine materials, and how it's made. The image of Buddha is one of the most recognizable in the world. Most frequently, he is depicted meditating in a lotus position, with his curly hair braided in tight knots. There are different versions regarding the origins of this hairstyle. Some say that such was the court fashion at the time. Others claim Buddha was completely bald. According to one of these legends, he once entered deep meditation under the scorching sun, and then a multitude of snails crawled up his head to protect him from the heat. Their curving shells are what we see on the statues today. Tetyana created unusual snail-shaped brooches and earrings. And then a reverse ring appeared, on which it's Buddha who adorns a snail's shell. Well, that's only fair, it adorned his head, helped him, and now he adorns its shell. Here they've switched places by decorating each other. In this ring, the master used parts made of gold-plated silver, combined with a fruit from the exotic tree. Initially, she wanted it to be a lotus. Then the master thought that while snails are not partial to meditation, they could be dreaming about something. There's also an interesting ring from the same collection, a ring about a snail that wants to be a woman, but she isn't completely sure whether she is a woman or a snail. This is so characteristic of women. There is also a brooch with a snail, which has a volcano in place of its shell. It just has a very explosive character. A snail that dreams of speed, it has a car in place of its shell, and there's a ring with the usual snail dreams to play catch. Tetyana always has blank rings made from jewelry wax, which can be completed at any time and sent for casting. After that, the designer adds decor elements with her own hands, including by soldering with a gas burner. Generally, this is a topic I can return to at any time. I'll just think about what else a snail could be thinking about. Now I've switched to mostly working with metal, although I'm trying to mix things up. I have a combination of some nut and metal. I don't use precious gems, but some rocks that I found in some pleasant places and took them along as a keepsake of good emotions and good times. This is their value. This is why they are precious. One day, Tetyana's friend brought her a dead stag beetle he found in a park and suggested she transfer it to metal. The designer took up the challenge out of sheer curiosity and mastered a new technique for herself. I took real bugs, made a mold from them. Not a single one was harmed in the process. All of them were already dead, and played around with the coloring. These were brooches and hairpins. I liked the idea of cockroaches in the head and bugs on the head. This was the association I had. Then I just got bored of working with this shape and decided to add something of my own.
Потом мне стало просто скучно с такой формой работать и захотелось внести что-то свое.
Beetles or the other Coleoptera are more than 300 million years old. Judging by fossils during that era, they and other insects like dragonflies and woodlice used to reach gigantic proportions comparable to current birds, cats and even humans. This is because back then the Earth's atmosphere contained much more oxygen. This allowed creatures with passive respiratory systems to receive it without problems. As soon as the oxygen amount in the air fell, huge insects disappeared. I thought, what form should a beetle take to survive in an urban environment? After all, most of us are urban residents, and jewelry should also be urban. I thought that it should be a transformer beetle, an origami beetle that can just fold and adapt in a matter of moments. Origami figures only seem simple when viewed from outside. The whole art is to fold one sheet of paper and get this three-dimensional object with many faces. Tetyana wouldn't have the time to master this on her own. I started working with origami masters, in this case more with Sergei Marchenko, and he made origami in various forms following Japanese patterns, from very small to simply enormous ones.
От очень маленьких до просто огромных.
I molded their shape in silicone and prepared them for mass production. And then I poured various plastics into these silicone molds and beetles appeared.
Туда различный пластик, и появлялась вот такая форма.
They were literally born, like real bugs, from pupae and transformed into such things of beauty. Tetyana tried many types of industrial plastic before finding one that was sufficiently strong and at the same time thin enough to be folded like origami paper. She experimented with various additives, multicolored, fluorescent, with iridescent effects.
В процессе, моя коллекция все время эволюционировала.
In the process, my collection was constantly evolving, and after the plastic beetles came the electrotyping stage. It meant I electroplated these shapes with copper and then covered them with either silver or gold or with various patinas. On some of them I leave certain parts as bare plastic because it gives an amazing effect of transparency to wings and brings the beetles closer to a natural appearance.
Крылышек и приближает жуков к натуралистичным.
Finally, the designer ended up with a technique for producing cast beetles, that is, all metal beetles made from silver-plated copper, but still with an origami effect. It can be difficult to distinguish them from plastic ones at first glance until you pick one up and feel its weight. But how does she turn paper into a metal casting mold? For this, Tetyana uses special molds. These conceptual decorations are also noticed by people from other creative fields, and unusual collaborations are born this way. Tetyana was asked in 2015 to create a collection for a tattoo festival. I began to think about what sort of jewelry tattooed people would be interested in. At first there was an idea in the form of tattoos, which could be worn on clothes, but then I thought that this was in general incredibly banal. So I started making what I thought to be really relevant for tattooed people, that is, body parts which they can put on to wear, as it's like a blank sheet of paper. After all, space on their bodies runs out, but the desire to make more tattoos is always there. A clothing designer, hairdresser and screenwriter worked together with Tetyana on this show. It was successful, but the creative team still had the feeling that this body theme can be developed even further. A few months later, they presented an entire performance in which jewelry was just one of the elements.
Это стало не просто как чистый лист бумаги и тело, запасная часть.
This wasn't just a blank sheet of paper or a spare body part. Rather, it probably became like an ode, some kind of song glorifying the body.
Насыщается различными.
It changes, gets filled with wrinkles. The body is adorned by life itself. That's how the idea appeared to put on a small performance show. And we developed a new concept for the show itself and the script for it.
Разработали новую концепцию самого показа, сценарий показа.
Music was written especially for it. It was beautiful. It was done in one breath. This was when it all really came together. Beetles, snails and other creatures from Tetyana's collections have already settled in many countries. However, first and foremost, the designer wants to show the Ukrainian public that jewelry isn't just a vessel for demonstrating wealth and status, but also for conveying irony, provocation and self-expression among kindred spirits.
Но мне очень хочется создать.
I really want to create an environment for communicating and popularizing modern jewelry in Ukraine. I want to create a jewelry platform where people can discuss their achievements, problems, share experiences, exhibit and display their jewelry.
Выставлять и показывать свои украшения.
And I want to tell people about this. The jewelry is an art form, just like painting, music and literature.
Живопись, музыка, литература.